Hey, happy Friday, everybody. All kinds of crazy going on. We've got college football tonight, and of course, over the weekend, we got the NFL. We've got NASCAR at Talladega. We've got the Ryder Cup, which is going on as we speak. So basically, then you've got throw in there a little bit of exhibition hockey. So there's not anything that if you're a fan of sports, there's pretty much something for everybody here. And of course, we also have the pennant races. There's still a few spots left open in that deal with, of course, Miami, Cincinnati, Chicago, all in the hunt, as well as Texas and Seattle. So all that it has gotten us a whole jam-packed program. So let's get to it. Let's start with tonight. Tonight we have some pretty decent games in college football. Middle Tennessee at Western Kentucky at 7:30 on CBSN. Alex Del Barro and Melik Zaire. And Western Kentucky has been a pretty solid team this year. Middle Tennessee State is favored, but on the road it's tough. It's always tough to play at Western Kentucky. That's on CBSN. Again, that'll be kicking off at 7:30. 7:30 is an American game. That's going to be in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Temple goes out there to take on the Golden Hurricanes. That's going to be on ESPN. Matt Berry, Dan Mullen, Jackson State and Sam Houston State, 8 p.m. on ESPNU. And that's Drew Carter and Dustin Johnson. And, some very entertaining, those three. The Temple Tulsa game should be a very, very good game. Temple comes in. They've played well this season. Tulsa, has played well in the American. It's early, and this is going to be one of those games between Tulsa and Temple that, you don't want to lose an early game in the in conference, and that's something that we'll have to see how that works out. Now, Saturday, let's go to the noon games. These are the best noon games on Saturday. Louisville at North Carolina State. That's 7 o'clock on ESPN. These are these games will be in prime time. LSU is going to play later. Okay, sorry, a little confusion there. Louisville, North Carolina State. That's a 7 p.m. game. Amish Sharaf, Andrew Ware, and Paul Carterina on the call. Columbia Princeton. It's an Ivy League game on 7 o'clock on ESPNU. Eric Furty and Jack Ford calling that game. Louisiana Tech, I said LSU. Louisiana Tech at UTEP, that's a 9 o'clock game on CBSN. Carter Blackburn is going to be on the call there as well. All right, so that's 7 o'clock games. Here's what we got today. Clemson and Syracuse. That game is 12 o'clock. That's on ABC. Dave Pasch, Dusty Dvorak, Tom Luckenbill. USC at Colorado. That's a 12 o'clock game, but it's a 9 o'clock game for USC. That's going to be interesting. Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt on that one. Number 22, Florida at Kentucky. That's a 12 p.m. game. Joe Testore and Jesse Palmer on the call for that one. So there's your early games on Saturday. Clemson, Syracuse on ABC. USC, Colorado on Fox. That's big noon. Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt. That's Florida at Kentucky. And then also at noon, Joe Testosterone and Jesse Palmer have the call on that game. Okay? All right, let's move on to the afternoon games. And here we don't have the schedule that we had last week with some killer games, but this is definitely a good one. Kansas at Texas. That's 3:30 again on this one's on ABC as well. Sean McDonough, Greg McElroy. Number 1 Georgia is hosting Auburn. Now that's always a tough game. I'm sorry, that's at Auburn. That's a tough game because again, Auburn plays Georgia well. They have always played them well. They really do. There's a little bit of long-term rivalry there. All right, 3:30. That's Brad Nessler, Gary Danielson. Number 2 Michigan hosts Nebraska at 3:30. That's over on Fox. That's Jason Benedetti and Brock Heward on the call there. Also, Baylor at UCF. That game is on ESPN, and it marks the first game on the campus of UCF since they became a Big 12 member. Okay, so there you go. That's an entertaining, should be an entertaining game. Here we go. Let's move on. Prime time on Saturday night. Notre Dame, number 11 at Duke. That should be a very good game. Reese Davis, Kirk Herbstreit hanging in that one. Michigan State, Iowa. That's Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge on NBC. We all saw Notre Dame and Ohio State last week, and ratings were good on that. Notre Dame and Duke. Duke might be the best team, other than Florida State, in the ACC this year. So it's not going to be an easy game for Notre Dame, and they're going to be playing at Duke, so that's going to be a challenge. Michigan State at Iowa, 7:30 on NBC. A lot of turmoil and a lot of conversation as to who is going to be Michigan State's next coach. Iowa playing good defense, but not a lot of offense. Should be an interesting game, and that will be the game Big Ten primetime on NBC. Let's continue here with some pretty good games. Alabama, Mississippi State, that's a 9 o'clock start with Mark Jones and Rod Kilmore. Quint Kesnick on the sidelines. Number 7, Washington at Arizona. That's a 10 o'clock game. That's on the Pac-12 network with Ted Robinson and Yogi Wath calling that one. Nevada at number 25, Fresno State. That's a 10:30 game. And Dan Hellie and Petros Papadakis has got that game for us. So that takes you through the schedule for college football. Just what we picked as the best noon games, best 3:30 games, and the best games in prime time. Now, also to be noted, on Saturday we have Fox with a baseball game. They are going to have at 7 o'clock. The game is going to be Texas at Seattle, and should be an interesting game. It's a very important game for both teams. So that's it. Baltimore at Boston at Baltimore is the backup game, just in case it rains. So you got that going for you. I would check the NBA and an MLB Network, because they have some games coming up on the weekend, and you're going to want to watch and make sure that that's it. Good morning. It's good to see you guys. Yeah, there's a lineup of pretty decent games on Saturday. Not like we had last week, but definitely quality games. So anyway, good to see you in the house, Immaculate. Let's chat a little bit. We'll get ready to go to the NFL as we look here. Let's move down, and here's the NFL schedule for Sunday. Let's start with CBS's schedule. That's Miami, Denver. That gives Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. Baltimore, Cleveland's got Ian Eagle, Charles Davis. Denver at Chicago. Andrew Catalone at Tiki Barber and Matt Ryan. Pittsburgh at Houston, Spiro Ditas and Adam Archuleta on the call for that. And the late game on CBS is Las Vegas at the Chargers at SoFi. That's going to be Kevin Harlan and Trent Green. So there's your announcing crews for that. Let's talk about Fox. And Fox has their early games. Start with Washington, Philadelphia. That's Joe Davis and Daryl Johnson on the call there. Cincinnati at Tennessee. That's Adam Amin and Mark Sheriff. The Rams are at Indianapolis. That's Kenny Albert and Jonathan Vilma. Tampa Bay at New Orleans. Very important game in the NFC South. Tampa Bay at New Orleans. That's going to be Chris Myers and Robert Smith on the call there. Minnesota, Carolina. Alan Faust and Brady Quinn on that call. Fox's late games. New England and Dallas. That's the A team of Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson. And then Arizona, San Francisco. That's the game with Kevin Kugler and Mark Sanchez on the list there. So you got that going on. And then, of course, let's go back up real quick and check out our Monday night. Sunday night, it's going to be Atlanta and Jacksonville. That's the early game. Remember, Sunday, there's going to be a game in uh, in London, and it's Atlanta at Jacksonville. That's a game on ESPN Plus only, and also on Disney Plus. So it's Chris Fowler, Lewis Reddick, Dan Orlowski. The Sunday night game is Kansas City at the Jets, which could be the Taylor Swift Bowl. Who knows? She might be in the audience in New York. So something to look forward to. And then, of course, Monday night, it's Seattle and the New York Football Giants. So that's what we got coming on national broadcasts, both on college football and, as we talked about, the NFL. So let's move down here and talk about. There, we get rid of that. Talk a little bit about the other things that are going on. We've got NASCAR, which should be fun. This weekend it's at Talladega. It should be a really interesting situation because Talladega is always one of those tracks that has challenges. Okay, it's hard to get through a race, and I haven't seen a race at Talladega because of the speed and because of the drafting situation where they end up, with some pretty amazing accidents. We certainly hope that no one gets hurt or that there aren't any accidents this weekend. But it's always a tough situation when you're racing at Talladega. We're talking about golf a little earlier, and some really good stuff with regard to the Ryder Cup. The Ryder Cup is always a challenge. It's always fun, and it's we don't get to see team golf often. And in this particular case, when it's the U.S. and Europe, you're talking about some of the greatest players in the world, and that's a cool thing too. So let's talk about today. You've got they're on USA Network and Peacock till noon today, and tomorrow it begins at 3:30 a.m. on USA Network, going to 3 a.m. again, and that's USA and Peacock, and then Saturday tomorrow morning 3 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Peacock and NBC, and then Sunday September Sunday October 1st. Change the dates on it. Sunday, October 1st, 5:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's NBC and Peacock. So that's where you're going to be able to find Ryder Cup this weekend. Also, if you have Sirius XM radio, you can get it on there, on the Golf Channel on there. So plenty of places to get it. So there's your situation there. And, another thing that happened this week, interesting. One of the truly good guys in sports, CBS chief Sean McManus, retired. David Benson, who's been at CBS for he's been there for a decade, is going to take over. So Sean's one of the most respected and appreciated presidents of sports. He actually even had the time, I think it was 2004 to 2011, he was the head of both CBS Sports and CBS News. So he is a good guy. His father, of course, was the outstanding broadcaster, Jim McKay. And Sean worked his way up through the ranks at ABC, then over to CBS, and he's done an outstanding job, shepherding CBS Sports into what it is today, a really strong and powerful sports department. So we wish Sean all the best. He's a great guy, and hope he enjoys retirement. David Burson is a good successor. Again, he's been involved in just pretty much every aspect of CBS Sports, so I wouldn't expect CBS Sports to look much different or take on a different tone with David at the helm. So there you go. All right, let's go to the questions here. What do we got on our friends talking to us? All right, let's see. Uh, Wildcat Dave. Let's see what you got for us. A lot of people talking about the. Here we go. As much as he would like to be on television or maybe going independent in the Big East. So I think you're talking about um, Wake Forest might try to join, and Georgia Tech might try to join the Big 12. Well, again, they'd have to break that grant of rights. That's an awful lot of of legal aspects to get there. We're not there yet, guys. I know this is a topic that was written earlier this week about the potential that Clemson was going to bolt the ACC. Well, they didn't attribute it to any specific person. They just said a high-ranking member of Clemson's, you know, of the Clemson athletic department. That could be anybody. It's just, guys, you're gonna have to. You're looking for something more specific. It's not that. None of the let's put it this way: none of the top name writers who would know those kind of things has written a single solitary word about that. So I'm holding judgment. Whenever I see Clemson calling a press conference to announce it, then it'll be something that I believe might very well take place. But right now, it's not there. So you may not want to look for something that isn't there. All right. So I also put something out here earlier, and this has gotten quite a bit of Twitter situations. This Patrick Bowen and I were talking about this, and that is that Utah football. Whether you're a fan or a hater of it, I think that they're going to be a force to be reckoned with for a number of years in the Big 12 Conference next season, along with if Coach Prime can get his second class together. That would be a good thing for him as well. So those two are going to slide in there. And Utah is kind of a sleeping giant. I know people in the college sports realm know how good Utah is, but not everybody does. And I think that that's something that we're going to truly enjoy going down the road is the competitiveness of the conference. And again, it's Utah and Colorado and all those Arizona State coming in. There's going to be some interesting situations, and of course the others, which would be Cincinnati, UCF, BYU, and Houston, all make for a very interesting mix going forward. So we'll see how that goes. All right, what do we got here? Stephen Adams doesn't think that Boston College would be a good fit in the Big 12. He favors Georgia and Wake Forest. And again, guys, I know you got people moving from one conference to the next, but here's the problem: it's not there yet. We're just not there yet. Okay. Whenever Clemson decides to move, we will all know about it. So let's keep going here. Oh, our buddy Wild Butte says he agreed to disagree. He won't leave until at least the Big 12 deal. So I guess he's talking about, let's see, agree to disagree. We won't leave. Oh, okay. He's talking about Utah now. They will not be leaving until there's they see a new big deal from the Big 10 and Big 12. They will have to pay an exit fee to buy the way out of the grant of rights, just like FSU, Clemson, and UNC have to do. So he's saying that Utah's going to stay in the Big 12, and he doesn't expect any of these other teams to head there, meaning the Clemson team. Fully aware of what's going on in Boulder. I've heard discuss the length, the complementary manner. Yeah, David, what's going on there is really a fun thing. I mean, you've got a very solid Coach Prime, and he's a great promoter. $45 million they've brought in so far in local economy. That's the estimation of the Denver News. So it's absolutely 100% that they are doing very, very well in Boulder, and there's no reason to not think that they're going to do well and continue to do well. And this weekend they play USC with, of course, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner in Caleb Williams. So you got some fun stuff going on there in Boulder. You don't want to lose it. Right. Let's see. The Clemson story seemed like a shot across the bow, but folks may be setting themselves up for disappointment if they're already thinking that the date is set. 100% right on that. There just hasn't been any corroboration to the story. I mean, if this was going to happen, you'd probably see Florida State and North Carolina and some others, in there. But Clemson says, that sooner than later. Sooner than later can be 2030, and they still have 6 years on the contract. So I don't understand where people are getting that Clemson sometime in October is going to announce they're leaving the conference. I just don't see that happening. It's not the kind of move that if they're going to go to the Big Ten or they're going to go to the SEC, it doesn't look. I mean, they both, as if we've seen anything, they like to keep that stuff close to the vest. I don't understand where this came from. I mean, I saw it in the newspaper, but at the end of the day, I didn't see anything that really popped out there that leads me to believe that that's even going to come close to happening. So no, I'm with you on that one. I don't agree. I don't think that Clemson's going anywhere. There's no need for them to go anywhere, and so why would they? So we will see what we will see, but it's just it's the rumor mill, and we've seen a lot of how that rumor mill works, and 9 times out of 10 it doesn't work well. So I don't know. It's kind of like the situation where we're getting a lot of feedback on would the Big 12 take Washington State and Oregon State? Well, if they wanted them, they could have taken them a couple months ago. So I don't know. I don't know. This doesn't make. Okay, you think some accurate? Let me read this for you. Immaculate says, I think there's something to the story about Clemson, but we don't know enough yet at this point. I do think it will happen eventually, but I don't think this was an announcement per se. I think it was just Clemson, talking about leaving. I mean, in some regards, my theory on this is that Clemson's a 2-loss team, and they're a bit, they may be a 3 or a 4-loss team when it's all said and done. Maybe this is a deflection. I mean, do I think that they'll get out of the conference sooner or later? Yeah, I think they will. Will it happen before 2036? Yeah, I think that'll happen too. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. And as you say, and I agree, that at the end of the day, what we've got here is just somebody taking a rumor, putting it out there, and seeing what happens. So we'll see how that works out. Let's go back. What about Washington State and Oregon State? It's simple. It's not simply about Big 12 wanting them. It's about the college football playoff business that they are holding up. That's what you think are changing things. It could be. It could be. I mean, Washington State, Oregon State has every right to go to court to find out where they stand with regard to the amount of money they're going to get back from the Pac-12. Okay, so they have every right to do that there, and they're going through the court system to make it work. I don't know that the Big 12 wants them, and if they did, they would have to dip into the $100 million that they received from Oklahoma and Texas when they left. I'm not so sure they're going to do that. So I don't know if I'm a fan of Washington State and Oregon State, I think you're looking at the Mountain West. And I don't think that the Big 12 is going going to take them. Okay. Yeah, that's a very good point. Um, if you would like to pop on, I can send you an invite. We can discuss it in that regard. It's yeah. I mean, these things are all from a standpoint of speculation, and it's fun to do that, but it also you get people riled up and excited only to find out that what they hope might happen doesn't happen. And so I think that's where we are. And I think that your point about Clemson, you know, just shooting across the bow, saying we're we want to be out of here. Yeah, sure. I think that that's just them making a statement. And again, is it going to happen tomorrow? No. Is it going to happen in October? No. Um, there's been a lot of people trying to break that grant of rights, and if they found some magic way to do it, then good for them. But I don't think that that's going to happen anytime soon. Uh, that is up to you. Okay. It is a pretty heavy conversation. I don't think that it's a conversation um, I mean, that we've had in the past. I think we've talked about that in the past. Is that you know we all do what we got to do to get done, right? And let me there you go. The situation with Clemson and with the ACC, and I know a lot of people have already, they're booking. Okay, well, let's when Clemson goes, then the ACC will fall apart and everything's going to hell in a handbasket. So, no, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that it's going to take a little time. Hang on a second. We're going to bring you in here, Mr. Okay. Surprise guest. Good to see you. How are you doing this morning?
Good to see you too, Jim. My apologies on not being on cam.
Nah,
It's
don't
very
worry.
early in the morning in Arizona still.
Fair enough. Totally understood. So, no, I was, I honestly believe you and I had this conversation before. I think it's good. I think that your theory on what's going to happen to the ACC with regard to it becoming, more of an Ivy-ish type,
Hmm. Yep.
conference, I think is really a good idea. I think that's where, they can continue to stay a Power Five conference. I would think, if well, in this case, a Power Four conference,
Yep.
by simply, adding some American teams, and I just think that in the long run, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and at this it's such an early point in this. I'm certainly not predicting it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of like a projection of I could see it going this way.
Sure.
And I think that's a good idea in that we stop doing five conferences all trying to do the same thing
Mm-hmm.
because that's going to have winners and losers.
Right.
And we start having conferences that each have their own unique take.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in that regard, we don't really have projections on the true value.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a conference like that, we might be surprised who they might entice to join that. Like, you know,
Yeah.
you could even see in the future the Ivies looking at that possibly with their scholarship situation that's going with multiple lawsuits
Mm-hmm.
and potential strikes by basketball teams and whatnot going on
Yeah.
there. So, yeah, I think that the Clemson thing is, like I said, a shot across the bow, but people are kind of going maybe a little bit too far. And I'm usually one of the guys who's looking far forward, but I'm still saying pump the brakes a little bit, folks.
Yeah.
They're definitely projecting out there some desire, and I could be part of a longer plan, but I don't think that there's a meeting set to jump out at this time.
Well, I don't. I agree. I don't think that if they were able to break the grant of rights, you know, that's something that I would imagine you don't want to do it in the middle of the football season.
Yeah, no.
That's not exactly, if they're, and at that point they're probably working behind the scenes with, you know, the usual suspects, which is FSU and North Carolina and you know perhaps Miami. You never know. Um,
Hmm.
I've
Yep.
heard Pitt. I've heard a number of teams, but
Yep.
I really, I just, it just doesn't sit with me. When the whole thing broke, it was like, okay, the there's just no other, but there's no other person other than this newspaper. And I'm not saying that they don't know what they're talking about. I'm just simply saying there just hasn't been a lot of corroborating of this on from any of the national media, and certainly even the local media in the Carolina area. So uh,
Yep.
again, not throwing shade on the newspaper. I'm sure that they work hard to get it, but when you get something like that, it's usually one of two things: the conference or the team wants to tell you something and get it out there.
Yeah.
And some people bite on it and some people don't. And again, do I think Clemson wants out? Yeah. Do I think they'll figure a way out? Eventually, yeah. But I don't know that it's going to happen as quickly as uh, Twitter thinks it's going to happen.
Yeah. And I personally think that if they're trying to do it, they need to gather a large group of schools to do it, because the
Mm-hmm.
best way, in my opinion, to challenge the Gore
Mm-hmm.
is to pull out so much value at once that ESPN has to come back and renegotiate with
Right.
the ACC, and that would force a new Gore to be signed.
Right.
So a couple schools trickling out probably doesn't get the job done. So what this looks like to me is them trying to gather, I don't know the right term for it. You could probably do it better, but like a consortium of schools that would all leave at the same time.
Well, it's like I mean, if you, when things get broken, right, like that, it's usually like a class action suit where you have multiples,
Mhm.
and that's what you want. I mean, lawyers want, if you're suing a big tobacco company or if you're trying to break, a contract with a union or something like that, you you have strength in numbers.
Mhm.
One is not enough, two is not enough, three is not enough. You need to have strength in numbers. What they need is at least half of the conference,
Yeah.
or close to it, and or at least the names of the
The
conference. The top
yeah, the top
producers of the
brands
conference. Yeah.
exactly.
So if you can get that, well, then you can, maybe there's something that can happen. Um,
And none of these schools want to do the really bad thing. They don't want to
yeah.
hurt the others. So I think it's more about the threat of being able to do it,
Right.
which brings settlement. But
Well, yeah, and I'm not so sure that Clemson and Florida State want to be in the SEC or be in the Big Ten. They want money. There's no question about that. But I'm not sure that they want to go, you know, dive in there and just be one of many. I just it just doesn't it just doesn't
it
hit
kind of
me that they want to do that kind of stuff.
it kind of seems Florida State does. They went
Well, they
very
do, yeah.
public about it, but you're right about Clemson. I mean, is that a better move for them? Is it, you know, they could look at that and say, yeah, the money's going to be better, but
Hmm.
how about that? Those payouts, I think they come down to about what, 25% of what an athletic department brings
Yeah.
in. I mean,
Hmm.
it's big, but if it causes your other avenues of revenue to go down because now you're a mediocre team
Hmm.
and you're getting less donorship, you're getting less buying of merchandise, you're getting less people coming in, less um, like season ticket holders, stuff like
Hmm.
that. You got to weigh it all when you're an athletic director. It's not
Sure.
just about the TV money.
No, it's not, and it's also a bit of a mess with regard to um, making certain that the relationships that you've gotten over the years with others universities can stick. And
Yeah.
you know, I don't. The fact that Florida State's jumping out there and leading the charge of saying we want to be here or we want to be there. Um, that's great, but you have to have a dance partner that wants you. And I'm not so sure that Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State would be so crazy about having Florida State in the conference. They might. I would think they'd like Miami more than they'd like Florida State, but I mean it could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you look at who they've gotten, and they brought the West Coast teams in. I still think that the people that run that conference is still Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State. And I'm not so sure that they want to. I think they do want to add teams in the South, but I don't know, if they want to add Clemson and Florida State. Maybe just Florida State, but I don't know that
Yeah.
Clemson fits their bill.
I would definitely make that comparison between Florida State and Clemson. I think getting into the state of Florida is a
Hmm.
big win for the Big Ten.
Right.
And to your point, Miami seems like a great one, but they're way down at the bottom of the peninsula, and they
Hmm.
don't have a great stadium situation right now.
Right.
And it kind of looks like that the push for them to get that has fizzled out. Florida State, on the other hand, they that's already set in stone. They are renovating. They're
Hmm.
updating that stadium for the future, and how
Right.
it's away from the old style of seating and more to individual seating there.
Hmm.
Um, and you're in Tallahassee, which is basically a gateway into the entire Deep South in terms of
Hmm.
recruiting. So if you have for those, I think for Ohio State and Michigan, Florida State is a big win. Yeah, will they
Hmm.
challenge you? Sure, but it gets you down into that area and it opens up the whole South to you. Now,
Hmm.
when you compare Florida State and Clemson, Clemson brings the same amount of challenge to you without as much of the upside,
Right.
in my opinion. So that's where I think you're dead on, Jim. Is I've had a hard time buying Clemson to the Big Ten, and a lot of
Hmm.
people have been saying it. Maybe it happens just to make this happen. I don't know. We'll have to see. But
Well, your one point, the point you're making about Florida State, if you go to the Tampa Bay area or down to the Miami area, I mean, you can be a Big Ten fan, and there are a lot of them,
mhm.
and still make it to Tallahassee, and you know, and it won't be a bad situation. I truly don't think there's many Big Ten fans in Clemson or in South Carolina for that
No,
matter.
probably not.
So it just, I mean, that's if you look at where they've gone, they've gone to places where they have a good, solid alumni base because it benefits the alumni to be able to come and watch the games.
Yeah,
So,
and I'd put Georgia Tech and Atlanta on that list as well.
oh, 100%. Yeah, they've been there. I mean, that would be, sticking a flagpole right in the middle of the Southeastern Conference,
Yeah,
because that's where they like to play their championship games, and yeah. So
yeah. You
being
could
in
argue
Atlanta,
Atlanta is the capital of the South, so to speak.
right?
I mean, that
Yeah,
is.
and it gives them an opportunity. So yeah, I wouldn't at all be surprised. I've seen Georgia Tech on a number of finalist lists. Um, and they've flirted with Georgia Tech a number of times. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, the fit's perfect for them. So if they could nail an FSU and a Georgia Tech, maybe that's the way they go. But I'm not buying Clemson. I know that they also feel comfortable with North Carolina, but then again, so does the Southeastern Conference.
Yeah, and in that article you're mentioning, one of the lines in that really stuck out to me is they said that they're talking about how South Carolina is trying to block Clemson to the SEC, which kind of showed their hand in that that's who Clemson would be looking at joining would be the SEC. Um,
Well, we all know how much that helped Texas A&M when Texas when Texas came in and they announced Texas joining the conference 5 minutes before Jimbo Fisher was getting up to announce to address the media day at the SEC football media day. So look, at the end of the day, they're going to do what makes the most sense financially for the league, and if that means
yep.
Clemson joining the league is financially, you know, a key, then they'll do it. If they don't, then they won't. So that goes back to your point, which I think is that I'm not so certain that Clemson is so gung ho about leaving. They just want to get more money.
Yeah, and we're seeing an interesting time right now for Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
Dabo has been very open about not being part of NIL, not doing transfer portal stuff, and it's affecting the team. So, if they're going to go forward and play in an even more competitive league, they're going to have to take a very good look at their stances on some of these issues, because they're going in the wrong direction right now if you're going to step up your competition in the SEC.
Well, the other thing that Dabo did is he lost a couple of offensive coordinators. He lost a couple of
He
defensive
has.
coordinators,
Yes, he has.
and most of those guys are, were his recruiters. And now has to get back into the recruiting business. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. No.
No, I was going to say, yeah. And in the recruiting, the way it's changing so much is it used to be you could stockpile.
Mm-hmm.
You could stockpile and have some big star guys come up a year or two later to play.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas nowadays, if they don't get playing time right away, some of these 4 and 5 star guys, they're looking for greener pastures the
Mm-hmm.
very first year. So that's where it's hurting guys like Dabo.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it's hurting. It's not really hurting at Alabama, but we're seeing a little bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's guys that are leaving for greener pastures very soon. So I think the future is a combination of strong recruiting and strong transfer portal usage.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you look at it, one of Alex Golesh, who's the new head football coach at University of South Florida, had a pretty decent, portal situation. And he basically went right to the point. He goes, "Look, there's a lot of kids who leave this area that don't want to be sitting on the bench because they know they can play,
Yep.
and so I can give them a place to play, and I can say, look, you want to start tomorrow? You can start tomorrow, with us." And so I think that's, you get a Lincoln Riley who understands how to work the portal. You've got Oregon and Washington who do a fantastic job with the portal. Got to give credit to Dion for what he did with the portal. I'm not so sure that anybody got as many people as he did through the portal. But you also go back to your point about Dabo and Saban and some of those guys. The headspace is, that's totally that's a foreign language to them, and it might make a Dabo or a Saban, ponder moving on, to retire or to do something else. Because if this is the way it's going to be from now on, they're not prepared for it.
Yeah, I can see that with Saban. That guy has such a legacy there already,
Mm-hmm.
Unmatched, and probably never will be.
Mm-hmm.
To continue on with the way things are changing. I mean, we're literally moving into a new era of college football.
Sure.
Things are going to be done differently. If I was him, I don't know if I'd really want to evolve for that for just maybe a couple more years of time. Whereas Dabo's still got a lot of time ahead of him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got to face that, and he's going to have to evolve.
Well, easier said than done in that case. I do think that had Saban gotten one more championship, I don't. I think he's gunning for one more. If he can get one more championship, I think he'll exit stage left. I don't think he wants to leave, with a team that's not, not a top team.
That makes sense. Leave on a high.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be the guy kicked out of the, kicked out either. But I don't think there's anybody in Alabama's got the guts to suggest that he stepped down. Nor, I mean, yeah, look, you got people in Alabama freaking, and they're only a 2-loss team.
They are not used to losing in Alabama. That is for sure. But they need to realize that Texas, and I've said this on our other show last night, I think that they may actually be the best team in college football right now. Now, they're still Texas, and they're still prone to losing games that they have no business losing whatsoever.
Right.
But when you look at, being from Iowa, I'm an offensive line type of guy. I think that's the heart of a team. You look at that first, and you look at that Texas offensive line, and it's scary. And
It's
when you're
very
talking
beefy.
about
Yes.
like 330 to 350 is the norm,
Mm-hmm.
where are you finding all that beef to get on one line? It's it's pretty extraordinary. So
They got a bigger front line than the Dallas Cowboys.
it's it is wild, and and it's Sarkisian leading them, who everyone was
Mm-hmm.
wondering when this guy was going to take off. This guy was largely responsible for the Alabama evolved offenses that
Mm-hmm.
everyone was like, "Is this really Alabama football?" When they were just rolling over
Right.
everybody. So it's not surprising that he was the guy that got it done in that stadium with
Mm-hmm.
that team. So I
And he's
don't think
got.
that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I'm sorry. I kept going. I don't think Alabama is as bad as people think, but they're
Mm-hmm.
not as good as what we've seen from Alabama. So
Well, and it goes back to what you're talking about with the depth.
yeah,
If you're not deep, then you're not. Then you've got problems, and that's really their problem is the depth aspect. And look, that the portal has given kids like Michael Pennick Jr. a second chance
how
to
about that
to
story?
prove what he's got. It's given Bo Nix a second chance at what he got. My God, Kevin Slow is what is he's his 27th year in the NCAA.
I think it's something. Yeah, it's like nine or he's
9
been
or
around
10,
a
yeah.
while.
He's got two master's degrees at this point. Um, no, all kidding aside, he landed at BYU and seems to have that seems to be a nice fit for him.
Hopefully it
So
is. But
yeah,
Pennick's coming out of Indiana. Like
yeah,
he was good at Indiana, but he wasn't talked about.
no,
And
no,
now I I actually think he might be the best quarterback in college football right now with the best offense, and
right.
he has a defense that Washington could be the. I just said Texas is the best team. I think Washington might be the second best team.
Well, actually, in my situation, I had Texas and Washington flipped. I had Washington one and
You might
Texas
be
two.
right. You put them in a game, and that could easily go
It's
Washington.
it would be fun to watch.
We
Definitely would be fun to
we
watch.
might get that.
And yeah, and I think Oregon is right up there.
Hmm.
I honestly, I don't think Georgia's. I think Georgia's in the top four, but I don't know that Kirby's got. He doesn't have his quarterback.
No, you nailed it. That's what I was thinking. I was waiting. I was like, it's a quarterback issue for Georgia right now.
Hmm And
He's okay, but he's not
he's surrounded by talent. There's no question about
sure.
that. He doesn't have the quarterback. And geez, I wonder where he could have gotten one. Maybe the portal. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
I,
you
I
know,
I do think he'll come along to that though. I think Georgia is going to be power. They just
well, yeah. Kirby's not a set in stone guy. He will advance, and in large part because he doesn't like losing. So if it takes him to use the portal to get what he needs, he will take the portal and get what he needs. It's just the way it is. But yeah, I think that he'll be fine, and that I think Dabo eventually will figure it out. He's got it's. I mean, he's a very bright guy, so it's not like he's suddenly gotten dumb. I think he just felt okay. We're Georgia year in and year out. We've gotten these top recruiting classes. We don't need to go there. It's okay.
yeah,
Fine. Figure that out. Then now you know that. Guess what? It would help you if you knew how to work that portal situation too.
yeah. It,
So
it generally takes the hard times to make someone
yeah,
who's been successful change their ways.
right.
You kind of almost have to be unsuccessful to then change
hmm
your ways. And not that Clemson's having a terrible year, but I think they're having a terrible year for Clemson standards.
Well, yeah, I think there's that, and the expectations were there,
Yeah,
and they're not meeting the expectations. And there's some good teams in the conference. I mean, Duke might be the best team in the conference.
I have Duke winning tomorrow.
Yeah,
I think that
I
they
was
win.
disappointed to be honest with um, with Notre Dame.
They were against a good team, and Ohio State does have a good defense.
Hmm
But I think we found out that these teams are no longer that much better.
No.
And Duke, still a little bit unexplainable at this point in time,
hmm
whether it's just like that well coached of a team, which likely means their coach probably isn't going to stay there much longer than this year.
Yeah.
But their win against Clemson, as you now you look back at how they played against Florida State,
Mm-hmm.
you look at it and I go, that Duke is an impressive team, and Notre
Mm-hmm.
Dame is coming there after what just happened to Ohio State. They could be up, or could be that they're not as good as we thought, and Duke is a lot
Mm-hmm.
better. But yeah, I think Duke has a lot to show. They got a lot to prove, and
Mm-hmm.
this if they do wins against Clemson and against Notre Dame, don't you got to put Duke in the top 10?
Yeah, no question.
Yeah. So
And that's without Coach K. I mean, you got some serious stuff going on there,
yep.
which is fun.
And in terms of I don't know if you really wanted to go into it. Like I was saying, the heavy conversation about Washington State and Oregon State, it, uh, it's a pretty wild story that I think we've even seen from the media articles
Right,
that no one really, in those positions saw this coming about. Like
right.
I don't think anyone actually thought it would make it to court. I don't think they thought it would. I think they kind of just thought it would take care of itself, and
Well,
I
I
think
think
there were some people asleep at the wheel. Go ahead. I'm
no, I
sorry.
was just gonna say, if I'm Washington State and Oregon State, I have no trust at this point. Taking it to court may be the only way I can find out what's going on.
Yeah, I mean they
And
got the temporary restraining order,
yeah,
and the next step is scheduled. I think it's early November is when they're going to
right.
be back in court again.
Mm-hmm.
And the conference football playoff folks,
Mm-hmm.
everyone on that board, I this must have been a significant blind spot for them because there's some pushback on what I was putting forward, but I have not seen anything come out saying that they actually changed the rules in regards to payouts. They wanted to, but they never
Mm-hmm.
did. So it stands as it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is that they give out chunks of money to conferences,
Mm-hmm.
and then the conferences spread that out.
Right.
It's not that number that they hand out isn't based upon how many teams the conference has.
Right.
And they wanted to change that because they knew that they all wanted to expand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they never got around to doing it. And so
Right.
now the way it stands is the Pac 2,
Mm-hmm.
if they maintain their status as a power conference within the CFP,
Mm-hmm.
they'll get that whole large chunk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's projected. I don't know. Do you know about Navigate Analytics and
Yeah.
that company? Are they
Yeah.
reputable, would you
Yeah.
say?
Very. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The numbers they came out with are that
Mm-hmm.
they're projecting over $300 million per power conference
Mm-hmm.
next year for the expanded playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're and with all those schools leaving, that just leaves Washington State and Oregon State to divide that.
Right.
And that's the new leverage to me.
Mm-hmm.
I, it's not that ESPN is losing money on that,
Mm-hmm.
but certainly when you have a conference like the ACC that's looking at money for some schools wanting to leave,
Mm-hmm.
getting that divided back up and some of that money going to them might solve some issues.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for all the other conferences, I mean, doing the math, I think it came down to somewhere about 10 million per school if that gets put back out to the other
Right.
conferences. That's who stands to gain now by the pack
Mm-hmm.
being dissolved. So it's not that I think that the Big 12 wants them or they've changed their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Your mark would have to be given something to do this. So your knowledge in this area, you could probably see what could be given, what could be done. That's a significant blind spot for me. But just looking at the
Yeah.
situation as it stands now, it's much different than it was earlier when it was just, hey, Big 12, do you like these guys? Do you want them? It's bigger now.
No, it is, and there's strength in numbers on that side too. Um, I know that Yormark had tried desperately to figure out a way to get UConn in there,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so I don't think that he's given up on. I mean, let's put it this way: I don't think that he would refuse a phone call from either of those schools. Whether it would end up, over a period of time of them ending up in the conference, I have no idea. But if you're a if you're a power conference, even for that matter, the ACC. If you're thinking about what's going on, you need to chat with these people because
Hmm.
there's stuff that they can help you with down the road. Even though, we had the Pac-2, you know, championship game last week, but they're two still good universities and still worthy of staying in a Power Five conference if it's at all possible. They're going to try to make something happen. I don't know that it will. It's to be to be honest, it's going to be one heck of a stretch.
Well, if the other conferences can somehow, and I don't know how this could happen, but if they can make the networks then do this, because this doesn't really behoove the networks. This doesn't really
Mm-mm.
benefit them to do another payout. It's about the other power conferences, and Kirk Schultz is on the um, the board of managers
Mm-hmm.
for the CFP, so his one vote is holding this up, in my
Right.
opinion. They keep talking about the West needs to get figured out every single time, both Dallas and in
Mm-hmm.
Chicago. They didn't get this business done. They said, well, we got to figure out the West. So it's pretty clear
Mm-hmm.
this is a problem. So those
Mm-hmm.
conferences somehow, and we actually had an interview with Bob Thompson
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday and asked him that. And he says, there are ways that it can happen through like extensions of contracts,
Right.
or they can give something to the networks to then get the networks to reach out and do this. And I don't know if it happens, but I think it's pretty obvious this is holding up some pretty heavy duty business. And so,
Well, you're going to have to capitulate to um, in the playoff aspect of it. What do we, how much do we give the latitude to the networks to decide where they want to be and what they want to do with it? So there's those are the kind of chips. I mean, look, Tony Petitti, when Tony got there to the Big Ten, if you remember, the NBC contract wasn't finished yet, and so he had to make some concessions to the NBC people that would keep them at the number that they had put themselves in the deal for, and he had to make them comfortable with it, while at the same time taking some stuff away from Fox, which you know was not an easy juggling act.
yeah.
So it can be done. It's just how creative can you be?
Yeah. And that's why we're guys like you probably have a lot more idea on how that could be than me. I'm just, from my little perspective over here, looking at the situation, saying that a lack of vision and a lack of preparing for unintended consequences has brought them to this point, and it's
Yeah,
given Washington State and Oregon State a bargaining position that I don't think anyone foresaw.
it
And
fell in their lap.
and kudos to them for
Hmm.
taking the initiative on it,
Hmm.
because I would have never, from what I saw from Kirk Schultz
Hmm.
previous, I would have never saw that from him. So whether it came from Oregon State or not, but he's the man in the breach now. And we've seen two of these meetings get blocked up, and they're calling for another one here before the end of the fall. So
Right.
maybe we see something happen with this. But like I said, this is an opportunity for your Mark to get something off of that whiteboard of his. You know,
Yeah. I
he
mean,
talked
there's
about it.
there's no
So
question about it.
they're
There's
they're not doing anyone a favor, though, shall we say?
no, no. This is
So
there's no favors here. He's got that war chest. He could take some of that money out of the war chest should he wish to, and make a deal to get them in.
yeah,
Uh,
I don't see Big 12 guys giving up anything for this. They're going to have to get, because no one else is taking those two schools. Like, I know some
no.
people are thinking maybe the ACC would. Like,
Well, if they
I don't
did,
think.
they could have taken him back
Yeah,
back with Stanford and Cal.
and it
So
and it kind of, if that idea that they want to kind of go the private university route, make something different,
mm-hmm.
that affects that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas OSU and WSU, in my opinion, clearly best aligned with the Big 12 and what they're building.
No, you're right. Um, the problem is, again, creatively, how do you get there?
Yeah,
Now,
that
if you are
that I don't know.
capable, if they were to score that cash, right, that we just talked about, they could basically go SMU on it and go in for nothing. for for the remainder of that contract. So it's a possibility. But you know, I'm not in those meetings with those people, so I'm just like watching from afar and trying to figure it out. But
Yeah.
there's there is value here. It's just what exactly at the end of the day can you get done to make it work?
Yeah, and that I do not know. All I know is it's a much broader situation now than when it was just the Big 12 looking for themselves and trying to find the money to add them. It's
Hmm. Well,
there's,
you know
there's
the old
more to it.
saying, "To be continued," right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So anyway, look,
Yep.
thanks for dropping by. It's been fun having you in the house today on a Friday. We talked about all the crazy football games we're going to be seeing, the Ryder Cup golf, NASCAR at Talladega. I mean, it's if you're a sports fan, there's pretty much a little bit of everything going on, even including a baseball team in your neck of the woods that is on the verge of making the playoffs.
Wouldn't that be something? I mean, it's been a while for them. It's
Yeah.
been a while. I actually thought that it wouldn't happen, but I'll give them credit. They have built up in the minor leagues and they have
Hmm.
done the long term way of getting to this point. So kudos to them.
Yeah. You've got the Baltimore Orioles of all teams
Another
winning
one,
the
right?
East, and Tampa Bay finishing second, and the Yankees and the Red Sox battling out for fourth and fifth in that division. So it's been a bit of a crazy year all the way around in all of sports. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But
Absolutely.
look, Immaculate, thanks so much for dropping
Sure,
by. It's
sure
always
thing.
a pleasure, my friend.
Always a pleasure talking to you, Jim, and appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure. Take care, everybody. We'll see you. We'll see you at the 2 o'clock show. All right. Be well. Take care.